Hello everyone, my name is Ziyu. Today our presentation topic is about China's international business environment, opportunities and challenges for Australian films. So this is our content. The first part is about the general introduction and problem background. The part two is about comprehensive analysis for 5 key questions. The part three is about conclusion, and the last part is about reference list. So the first part is about general introduction and problem background. And so China is the world's second largest economy and a central player in international trade, best and global governments. Since its access to the WTO in 2001, China has transformed from a related closed uh, central planted system toward a socialist market economy that combines state intervention with market-oriented reforms. This transformation has allowed China to integrate deeply into global supply chain, attract significant foreign direct investment, FDI, and image as the world's factor. So China's rise as a global power brings both opportunities and risks for international films. So globalization has opened vast markets for in manufacturing, technology, and renewable energy, but also exposed business to strict regulations and cultural differences. For Australian films, the success depends on balancing growth potential with caution, using China's advantages while managing policy changes and cultural gaps. So in short, China is an attractive yet complex market that requires long-term planning, adaptability, and careful understanding. So part two is about comprehensive 5 key questions. So this is our group allocation film. The first question is about mine. So the first question is about how has globalization influenced the political economy of China and what challenges might the legal system of China present for an Australian film considering establishing a presence in China? So from my perspective, it may have 3 parts that are political system, the ecosystem, and the legal system. So the political system means that globalization pushed China to shift from a closed central planned system toward international engagement. And since joining the WTO in 2001, China's Communist Party has maintained a one-party political control but adopted trade and investment policies to integrate with global markets. And the next is about the economy system. China developed a socialist market economy. Markets allocated resources, but the state remains heavy involvement through state-owned enterprises, SOEs, and subsidies and industry policy. And globalization enabled China to become the world's factor, but attracting FDI, integrating into global chains, supply chains, and boosting exports. And the last system is about legal system. So China has updated its legal framework to meet international standards, reform in contract law and competition law and intellectual property rights were allocated by WTO membership. So foreign investors must have navigated a civil law-based system with socialist characteristics, where laws are confined but duty interdependence is limited. So I think that there also have some challenges for Australian films. So the first is about the regulated barriers. Foreign films often face license restrictions, land approval process, and sector-specific caps on foreign ownership. And also some sensitive industries such as media, technology, finance are technically controlled. And next, I think that is about IP protection. Although IP laws exist, the enforcement is weak, and the IP film may remain significant risk, especially for the consumer goods and the technology films. And the third is about judicial transparency. Then Australian films may struggle to enforce contracts, especially against the domestic SOEs with strong political backing. And the last is about policy shifts and political risks. So China's regulative environment can change quickly, such as crackdowns on technology, education, and some foreign influences. And also, films must adapt to government priorities, such as the Made in China 2025 plan, which can disadvantage foreign competitors. So, in conclusion, for an Australian film, this dynamic presents both opportunities and risks. So, China's vast consumer market is attractive, but film must navigate some regulations, limited judicial transparency, and compliance barriers add to uncertainty. So, this legal system challenges means that Australian films must invest in local experts, joint venues, and strong risk management to establish a stable presence in China. So this is my part.
So, as the world's second largest economy and Australia's largest trading partner, China is a market that Australian business simply cannot ignore. For Australian companies, stepping into the Chinese market means not only tremendous opportunities but also significant challenge. To explore which dimension matters more for Australian business, I will examine this question from two key perspectives: economic development and human development. Finally, I will compare the two and conclude which is more important. Let's begin with China's economic development. First of all, China's GDP ranks second in the world today, only after the United States. This reflects the vast scale of China's overall market. Its GDP per capita (PPP) is approximately 27,000 US dollar, which is much higher than the nominal per capita GDP of 12,000 US dollar. This indicates that although the overall income level is still lower than those developed countries, it is growing rapidly. And it also suggests that consumption potential of China's middle class has been underestimated. At the same time, although China's net inflow of FDI declined from 344 billion US dollar in 2021 to 51 billion US dollar in 2023, it remains one of the world's most significant FDI destinations. High-tech industry, manufacturing, and the new energy sector continue to attract substantial investment. In summary, China is not only larger and dynamic, but also increasingly attractive to global investors, offering Australia from both significant opportunity and notable risk. Now let us turn to China's human development. According to the UNDP, in 2023, China's HDI stand at 0797, ranking 78 globally and placing it in the category of high human development. With a significant increase in higher education enrollment, the number of university graduates has grown substantially. This improvement in workforce quality provides Australians with stable and capable talent pool when considering market entry. Although regional disparity remain evident, China's mid-income group is expanding rapidly, bringing considerable potential demand for goods and services. At the same time, China's stable social environment and supportive policy suggest that investment risk for foreign enterprise are relatively low. Together, these factors make China not only a promising consumer market but also a reliable environment for long-term business engagement. So, which measure is greatest important for Australian firms when entering Chinese market? I believe both matter because economic development reflects the size of the market, its purchasing power, and the investment opportunity, while human development reflect the long-term sustainability and the quality of the workforce and consumer demand. For short-term decision, we need to focus more on the economic development, but for the company planning to stay and grow in the long run, human development become even more important. For Australian business looking to enter China, both dimensions deserve close attention. While profitability naturally requires close monitoring of a country's economic development, long-term steady growth in a foreign market requires serious consideration of human development. By paying attention to both, company can reduce risks and build a more secure path towards sustainable success. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the cultural distance between China and Australia. I will explain the difference and also discuss if the two cultures are becoming more similar or more different over time. Culture is very important because it influences how people think, how they behave, and how they do business. When people from different cultures meet, they sometimes have misunderstandings. That's why it is useful to study cultural distance. Okay, let's begin with household cultural dimensions. According to Household, Australia has low power distance and high individualism. This means Australia likes equal relationship. For example, students may call their teacher by their first name. Workers may talk to their managers directly and openly. Australians also value person freedom. People believe that everyone should have rights to make their own choices. China is different. China has high power distance and collectivism. This means people respect authority. For example, students usually show strong respect to teacher and workers may not challenge their boss directly. Also, collectivism means people often think about the group before themselves. For example, in family, children are taught to take care of parents, and at work, teamwork is more important than individual success. So we can see a clear cultural distance between Australia and China. One value equality and the individual, the other value and the group. Another way to look culture is growing and shrink culture clusters. Australia belongs to the Anglo cluster. Anglo countries focus on independence and short-term goals. For example, Australians often view quickly result and efficiency. China belongs to Confucian cluster. Confucian countries focus on harmony, respect, and long-term relationship. For example, in China, business people spend a lot of time building trust before signing a contract. This cluster shows that Australia and China have very different cultural value. Now let's talk about the globalization. Globalization makes more culture look more similar. For example, young people both in China and Australia use social media every day. They like the same brands such as Nike and Apple. They also watch the same movies, listen to the same music, and even eat the same similar fast food like McDonald's. However, deep cultural values are harder to change. For example, respect for hierarchy is still very strong in China, but much weaker in Australia. Family roles are also different. In China, children often live with their parents until they are older. But in Australia, young people usually move out earlier and live more independently. Researchers such as House explain that this deep value change slowly, even with globalization. So what we can conclude? Australia and China are becoming a little more similar in lifestyle because of the globalization. For example, people share fashion, technology, and any other things, but when look deeply, their cultural values are still very different. It is important for international business. For if an Australian company wants to be successful in China, it must understand this cultural difference. For example, Australian managers should know that building relationship, show respect, and thinking long time are very important in China. In short, lifestyle may be more similar, but cultural value remain far apart. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Rui Wang. Today I will discuss which industries China should specialize in when looking to trade with other countries. And I will compare two important economic theories, Adam Smith's absolute advantage and David Ricardo's comparative advantage, and finally give my recommendation on which theory China should follow. First, Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage suggests that a country should specialize in industries where it is most efficient and can produce goods at a lower cost than other nations. And for China, this means focusing on scooters where it's already least globally, such as electronics and manufacturing, for example, smartphones and textiles and apparel. It means that benefiting from low cost large scale production and renewable energy equipment, and just like solar panels and wind turbines. And on the other hand, David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage focuses on opportunity cost. It argues that even if another country is more productive, overall, China should specialize in industries where it is relatively more efficient. And based on Ricardo's theory, China should prioritize in electronics assembly and components and green technologies, where China leads in renewable energy production and machinery and automotive parts, when production costs are lower than in other scooters. And the last part, recommendation and reasons. I believe China should follow David Ricardo's comparative advantage theory, for three reasons. The first reason is it maximizes overall trade benefits for China and its partners. And reason two, it helps China integrate better into global supply chains. And the third one is it aligns with China's current trade strategy, especially in high-value manufacturing and renewable energy exports. And in short, by focusing on industry where its relative advantage is strongest, China can stay competitive and achieve sustainable economic growth in international trade. And that's all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miao Hui. In this section, I will answer question 5 by showing what trade policy instrument China currently uses, which trade series through truces align with, and most importantly, what an Australian firm should actually do when entering or expanding in China. Our slides summarize the toolkit, recent policy signals, the salary mapping, and a 5-step action plan for managers. Firstly, the toolkit and the current signals China's policy makes is liberalization in many areas combined with selective protection in strategic sectors. The toolkit you see on the slides include traps and FTAs, notably Shafter and RCEP, which can lower duties if your product meets rules of origin. Trade remedies, anti-dumping, and countervailing actions are used and can be removed when conditions change. The deck highlights the removal of duties on Australian wine and barley and AD duties on EU brandy in 2025. Non-tariff measures. Tariff rate quotas in grains and SPS standards that require registrations and compliance, for example, food facilities registration. Export controls, notably on gallium, germanium, graphite, and some UAV-drawn items, which can affect teach and battery supply chains. Subsidies, industrial policy, strong support for new energy vehicles and other strategic industries. Foreign investment negative list, sector-specific caps and approvals, with FTZ list sometimes more liberal. A few current signals matter for Australia. The DAC notes MFN traps around 7.3% on average, higher for agriculture than non-agriculture. The wine and the barley resist that repugnate important agri-channels. The 2025 AD actions on EU brandy and the tightened exporting controls on key inputs. The Heinlein interpretation is use the profession agreements to open the door, then plan for compliance and supply risk management to stay in and skill. Secondly, which series do these instruments support? Slide 2 maps each instrument to the relevant international trade and IB series and then to a manager's next step. Tariffs and FTAs, comparative advantage and regionalism. Preferential deals like Shafter and RCEP operation leads comparative advantage across the region. For firm, the practical move is to compare duty outcomes under each agreement at the school plus rule level and choose the cheaper compliant path. Trade remedies in situation-based will and strategic trade. Active use of AD and CVD reflects how institutions and enforcement shape market access in all journalistic sectors. It also resembles strategy trade logic. Firms should maintain cost and price fields, scenario plan for price floors, and monitor patterns so there are no surprise. Thirdly, the five-step action plan. To translate policy into action, tariff minimums for each product, run shafter vs RCEP, and pick the round with the lowest landed duty that you can prove via raw documentation. Compliance first, start SPS standards, registration earlier, and prepare Chinese language dossiers to avoid rework. AD and CVD hygienes, perceiver cost and pricing records, bake price floor color into distributor contrast, and trick case fillings. Supply secretary dual source control inputs like graphite, where possible localize compartments. Consider buffer stock for long lead items. Entry mode by the list. Check your activity against the current negative list, FTZ list. Choose WFOE and GV and partners structures that clear approvals and perceiver control where needed. Finally, China's trade policy is not pure protection nor pure liberal. It's selective open. Australia firms win by optimizing trade pathway, front-loading compliance, hiding policy and supply risk, and designing and enter models around the negative list. Do those four things well, and the policy environment becomes a source of advantage rather than a barrier. This is our presentation reference list. Thank you.